TuneIn Radio app, and on hotnewstalkradio.com. Now, the interesting thing about this weekend in football is it proved us how little we ultimately know about football. Like, honestly, Mr. Judd and I, we do our picks every week. The college football picks, we pick some games from the top 25, plus some games of personal interest to us. And look, this is a week that you could have lost a lot of money betting. Like, this is a week you could have foreseeably lost a lot of money because all the things that you thought you knew, you did not know. I promise. And that goes NFL and college alike. It was a fun weekend in college football, an absolutely fun weekend. But man, how wrong and how bad is Texas? You know how bad the Longhorns are? And I don't want to give away one of my takeaways for college football before I get into it, but man, you have a player tweeting during the game about wanting to transfer out. Oh my goodness. 50-7, the Longhorns fall to the TCU Horned Frogs. And look, Charlie Strong hasn't had an opportunity yet to bring all of his people in. And I think the normal amount of time for a coach to have built up his system and really started to turn something around, change the culture in a locker room, give him 3 years, especially in college, because you're recruiting. And so you've got the previous coaches guys there, and they've got to all, go on and graduate. You're still trying to build up your system. You don't have all of the parts that you'd want. And I think that Charlie Strong, his development as a head coach is it's slower than I think Texas fans want. And it's exaggerated by the fact that Jim Harbaugh walked into Michigan and Michigan starts winning. And, you see guys walk into different programs, Sarkisian and USC. I mean, USC doesn't look good now, but like initially people were like, oh, hey, that's pretty cool. Jim McElwain in Florida. I thought that Jim McElwain was going to need 2 or 3 years for this Florida team to start looking good as well. And this Florida team, they look like a bunch of world beaters down there. I mean, they look good. But we'll save some of those for the takeaways. I'll start with the NFL takeaways. Save the best for last. But man, college football, it was just so up and down and nothing. None of us know anything. Alabama's not as bad as we thought. Georgia. I mean, look, there's just so much I want to talk about. And then there's the non-football stuff too that I could not have accounted for Stephen A. Smith of ESPN's First Take and Oklahoma City star Kevin Durant getting into a beef. Nobody could have accounted for that. If I didn't have anything to talk about and that had happened on a Wednesday, that would have been the whole show. And there's enough material there in Kevin Durant and Stephen A. Smith being angry at each other that could have powered an entire show. That could have powered 2 hours of a show. And unfortunately, I only have one. I've only got a segment to talk about that. Can you believe that? That's just one segment of this show. There's so many things that happen. Joe Philbin gets fired, and so does Matt Williams, the manager for the Nationals. And let's just start. We'll start with the NFL takeaways because that's a good place to start, I think. Proving once more that none of us know anything. The number 5 takeaway is that the Dolphins are terrible, and I think maybe we all knew that one. So maybe that's not the best takeaway to prove my example here, but the Miami Dolphins are terrible, and Joe Philbin had to go, which is why he was fired this morning. The former head coach of the Dolphins now, Joe Philbin, just didn't bring enough of a spark to this team. If you listen to Joe Philbin speak, you want to go to sleep. He's like your economics teacher that talks and his voice is dry like this, and he leaves the air conditioning on and it's warm and you want to fall asleep. The Joe Philbin is possibly one of the most, or was when he was a head coach, one of the more boring coaches in the NFL. Belichick sounds boring, but if you listen to what he's actually saying, Belichick's got a little bit of that sneaky humor, that dry humor where you're just like, wait a minute, did I just get insulted by Bill Belichick? Yes, you in fact did get insulted by Bill Belichick. He's like that. Philbin didn't even have that. Philbin didn't even have that. Like the year that they were on Hard Knocks, that easily he had one of the more entertaining teams, and he himself made Hard Knocks boring. It was like his mission to make Hard Knocks boring. It was unbelievable. It's unbelievable. If they didn't have Chad Ochocinco on that NFL Hard Knocks, like that would have been impossible to watch. Ochocinco literally made that Hard Knocks up until, the point where he headbutt his girlfriend and the team let him go. But before that moment, I mean, Joe Philbin wasn't carrying that for anything, and he had that awkward couch that he would sit on when he told players to go, and it was just awkward, and he comes off a lot of times as very awkward. And he also wasn't coaching very well. Like the team didn't look like they wanted to play for him. And like the losses that they had, they're embarrassing losses. It's not like, oh, they just got beat by a point here and a point there. And like you look at the New York Giants, and the New York Giants aren't 4-0, but they could easily have been. And you look at some of the games that they had, and they're close. They're 2-2. They lost a couple of games where they had a lead. They should have played better. Stuff like that. You didn't have any of those with the Dolphins. The Dolphins were just getting waxed by everybody that they played. And they lose to the Jets this weekend in London. And I have to think, why is it that we think that if we import all of our terrible Florida football teams, export all of our terrible Florida football teams to the UK, they're going to want to watch football? Because we keep sending them terrible Jaguars football, and we keep sending them terrible Dolphins football. Like, eventually, and I believe it's sold out. It's sold out, but like, why? Like, maybe they don't know what they're looking at, our friends in the UK. But like, if we're going to do this thing seriously, like we're going to try and seriously send the UK American football, can we send them something good? Can we stop sending them the Dolphins, please? Can we stop sending them the Jaguars? At least the Jaguars are trending up. The Dolphins, I don't know why would we send them that? Why would we do that? Do we hate them? That's just a thought of mine. The Dolphins are awful. They're dreadful, and now they're going to have a coach in the middle of the season, which never happens in the NFL. So you know that this is a desperate coaching change, because in the NFL, like at this point, if your coach is not coaching well, your season's basically done. Like a quarter of the way in, it's tough. If you're 1-3 right now, you're just hanging in there. If you're 0-4, you're finished. If you're 2-2, you're on the right track. You're on pace. And if you're 3-1, 4-0, you're excelling. Okay? And the Dolphins are 1-3. They probably shouldn't even have beaten the Redskins. They had a fluky special teams touchdown at the beginning of the season. The Dolphins ought to be 0-4. They're 1-3. They suffered embarrassing losses to the Jaguars, Bills, and Jets, and they're dreadful. They are just dreadful. And now they have no coach. Number 4 takeaway from the NFL weekend: Jay Cutler returns to help the Bears beat the Raiders, and Martellus Bennett has the best quote of the NFL season. Jay Cutler had a strained hamstring, did not play the week before. He wanted to, according to some reports, but he did not play. And he really is a tough guy. I mean, I know that he's got that reputation of not caring and all of that. Honestly, and we've talked about it here on the show before, that's just his face. That's just Jay Cutler's face. His face looks like a face that doesn't care. But Jay Cutler himself actually does care. Like, you can tell, because nobody would play through a sore hamstring. I mean, dude's limping around, and he's still going out there and delivering. Yes, he's going to throw his fair share of interceptions, but I mean, I have a friend at church. She's a Bears fan, and she came to the realization that I think a lot of other Bears fans realized. You would rather have Jay Cutler than Jimmy Clausen. Yes, you would. Yes, you would. There's no more terrifying a nightmare than waking up on a Sunday morning and realizing that Jimmy Clausen is legitimately the starting quarterback of your football team. There's nothing more terrifying than that on this earth. And Jay Cutler came back, and he didn't disappoint. He didn't disappoint. He even led the game-winning drive that got Robbie Gould into field goal position for the field goal for the Bears so they would beat the Oakland Raiders 22-20. Jay Cutler had a great performance, 2 touchdowns, 281 yards, 28 for 43 passing. And I really like Martellus Bennett quote about Jay Cutler because it's like the quote of a person that just understands things, but not quite enough. The reporter asked Martellus Bennett if Jay Cutler is too criticized, if he gets criticized too much, and I think he does. And Martellus agrees, but Martellus said, and I quote, "They threw rocks at Jesus, and Jesus was an excellent guy who did a lot of awesome stuff." He just compared Jay Cutler to Jesus. You can't do that, man. And it was like not even like specifically what awesome stuff Jesus did. He was just an excellent guy and he did awesome stuff. Okay. All right. I was absolutely tickled by that quote. That's the funniest thing that I've heard in one of the funniest things that I've heard in a very long time. Like I said, this whole weekend, you can't put a price tag on this whole weekend. This is the best weekend of football that we've had so far, and it's not even close. Number 3 takeaway of the NFL weekend, Colin Kaepernick looks dreadful. He looks absolutely dreadful. And the 49ers continue to spiral out of control. That Jim Tomsula, who farted during a press conference last week. And, it's a slow news day when Jim Tomsula's farts become the story of the day, except like, you're the head coach of a football team, dude. Have some awareness and don't rip one during a press conference. You can't rip one during a press conference, man. It's not okay. But Jim Tomsula aside, Colin Kaepernick did not look very good, and it's something to me that's perplexing because I'm trying to figure out how. Like, my brother was so mad at Colin Kaepernick last week because Colin Kaepernick, I think, gave him 3 points in fantasy football. And if Colin Kaepernick couldn't run, that would have been negative points. And what I want to know is how. Like, most quarterbacks on their bad day don't give you just 3 points. Like, I am a Redskins fan, and as a complete homer, I have had Robert Griffin starting on my fantasy football team in weeks when he should have no business starting. And I have to tell you, even on a bad Robert Griffin day, we've never been at 3. I mean, at least Robert Griffin will give you some good points in garbage time. If the game is out of hand and out of control, he's going to give you a ton of yards, and he might throw a touchdown or two in garbage time. You're getting nothing, okay? You're getting nothing out of Kaepernick in garbage time. You're getting nothing out of Kaepernick, period. Dude is throwing. Here's his stat line from Sunday. He's 13 of 25, 160 yards, no touchdowns, and an interception against the Green Bay Packers. He's got mockery coming from all sides. The people in the media are laughing at him. The fans are laughing at him. You've got him. You've got Clay Matthews tackling him and laughing at him and telling him that he's not even Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson is a good quarterback, but let's be honest with you now. I've talked about this ad nauseum too. I think Russell Wilson's a decent quarterback. I think he's a good quarterback with a great team around him. And I think that that's all you need in the league. I don't think you need a great quarterback. You need at least a good one if you can build a good team around him. Okay? And so to say that he's not even Russell Wilson is more painful because it's not like he said, You're not even Tom Brady. He said you're not even Russell Wilson, man. That's like telling him you're not even Ryan Tannehill, bro. Ow. Ouch. Clay Matthews. That's just mean. It's mean. And it's unnecessarily cruel. And I can't believe. And my number 2 takeaway from this NFL weekend, and it's going to be a quick one. The Atlanta Falcons, these guys are for real. They're 4-0 now, and they do it this week against the Houston Texans, much to the chagrin of my fantasy football team, without Julio Jones. Without Julio. Okay? Devontae Freeman leads the Falcons to another win, 48-21 over the Texans. The Texans look really bad, but Devontae Freeman and that Kyle Shanahan zone running scheme looking like a beast out there. And, I mean, he can't get caught. And Dan Quinn, what he's done to this defense cannot be understated. We'll get to the number one takeaway of this NFL weekend right here on AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio's Clutch with Keon Rose.
Media Network's coverage of the NFL. Hi, this is Jerry Recco. Join Kevin Ray, Danny White, and myself for all the action.
Hot News Talk 1240.
If it's the NFL, it's right here.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
Hot News Talk 1240.
Tired of insurance companies? Tired of doctors that won't spend time with you? Do something different. Leave the sick care model of medicine and come to Dr. Danielle Mitchell, the Chattanooga Sports Institute and Center for Health, where we're interested in long-term health solutions, not the quick fixes. Come see me, Dr. Danielle Mitchell, at the Chattanooga Sports Institute and Center for Health. I'm all about the long-term healthcare solutions and doing what's best. On the web, you can find me at ChattanoogaSportsInstitute.com. That's ChattanoogaSportsInstitute.com. Or call us at 875-1005, 875-1005, or find us on social media, Facebook, Dr. Danielle Mitchell, or the ChattanoogaSportsInstitute.com. Let's go, ya!
Are you tired of working in corporate America, or have you recently lost your job and would like to consider owning your own business? If you are, please call me, as I can help you look at franchises or business opportunities that fit you, the economy that we're in, and the type of businesses that are right in the greater Chattanooga area. After I help my clients find the right opportunity, I also help them find the best way to finance the business, including paying yourself through the startup phase. If you would like to learn more about opportunities that may be right for you, please call me for a free assessment. My name is Bruce Krebs at the Entrepreneur Source. Phone number is 423-875-5621.
That smells so good. Smells like a big Italian dinner. But you're going to walk out with two. Buy one hot pizza, get a one for free. Two pizzas. You got the two for the price of one at Raphael's Italian Restaurant and Pizzeria. My favorite Italian restaurant of all the time. Now, I'm living in Hicks, and I go to Raphael's right down the street in Hicks and Pike, right near Highland Plaza. You're in Saudi Daisy? Raphael's Italian Restaurant and Pizzeria in Saudi Daisy. Just next to Saudi Daisy Church of God. Hey, you're on Signal Mountain? There's a Raphael's Italian Restaurant and a Pizzeria. It's right on the main drag. You're going to love the pasta, the pizza. Buy one hot pizza, get a one for free. Two pizzas. You got the two for the price of one at Raphael's Italian Restaurant and Pizzeria. Tastes so good. Bring the whole family. Come on, Raphael's Italian Restaurant and Pizzeria. Mangia. Salute.
The Fed raising rates, China's economy in trouble. Don't let headlines derail your long-term financial strategy. I'm Edward Jones financial advisor Patrick Neal. At Edward Jones, we provide the tools for a reasoned, disciplined approach to investing. Stop by my office next to the Target Shopping Center in Hickson, or call me at 423-870-7894. That's Patrick Neal at 870-7894. Edward Jones, making sense of investing. Member SIPC.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
So I have a tie for my number one for the NFL takeaways of this past Sunday. My number one, is that somehow the Jaguars were not able to beat the Colts without Andrew Luck and with the apparently ancient and always eternal Matt Hasselbeck, 40 years old, leading the Colts to victory. No luck, no problem for the Indianapolis Colts. I can't believe that Matt Hasselbeck is still playing football. And I can't believe that I've had to say this 2 weeks in a row, because last week was Charles Woodson. Charles Woodson made an interception for the Raiders to help them beat the Ravens. I was just like, I mean, what was it? 2 weeks ago, was it? And I was shocked because I did not realize that Charles Woodson was still in the league, much less making meaningful football plays. And then, Matt Hasselbeck, who is on the all-time getting them checks team because he's 40 years old. I'm like, what could Matt Hasselbeck actually do still? He's 40. This is ancient, okay? 40-year-olds do not play football professionally at the quarterback position, typically. Okay? And you just hadn't seen him in so long, and then he resurfaces in Indianapolis and wins a football game. You could have, you could have fooled me. I would not have guessed. Like, you asked me that in a trivia question somewhere, is Matt Hasselbeck still in the league? I would have answered no, because he's 1,000 years old. He's still there. And my 1B for the number one takeaway from the football weekend, my favorite takeaway from the NFL weekend, was Josh Norman. Man, that man has been playing some unbelievable football all season long for the Carolina Panthers. And the Panthers and the whole NFC South, Buccaneers, Saints, Panthers, and Falcons, that whole division looks so good. The Buccaneers are bad, but they're trending up. The Saints are shaky, but, with Drew Brees and his shoulder injury and their lack of weaponry offensively, I don't know what to tell you about the Saints. I'm surprised that they still win games, and they won last night, were able to beat the Cowboys in overtime. But I got to tell you, when it comes to what I've seen out of the NFC South, that division looks good, and the Panthers are easily one of the grittiest teams in the division, because the Falcons are clear in a way like the best in terms of just talent from top to bottom. The Panthers don't have the talent from top to bottom, and part of that is injuries that have played into that. But when it comes to just the will to get things done, and especially when it comes to how they get things done, if Cam Newton can't do it, and Cam's been playing incredibly well, and despite having Kelvin Benjamin go down and losing his receiver, I mean, he's still out there finding ways to get it done. He's passing the ball incredibly well. He's moving from that runner's mentality. He's throwing the ball around the yard, and it has been incredible to watch. But on the defensive side of the ball, Josh Norman is a baller. And my favorite part about the entire weekend was that Josh Norman intercepted Jameis Winston for a pick six, returns the interception for a touchdown, and in the end zone, he starts dancing his touchdown celebration. He gets flagged, but they ask him after the game, and Josh Norman said he called the league office before that game, okay, and said and asked them if he could do his touchdown celebration, and they cleared the celebration. So he didn't get fined for it. They did lose yards in the game, but he didn't get fined for it. And I'm just thinking, like, what incredible either confidence, hubris, arrogance. Josh Norman called the league office. He was so certain, like he was just sure that it was going to happen, so certain that he was going to intercept Jameis Winston, that he had a touchdown celebration in mind and prepared for that occasion, and he called the league office in advance to see if it was okay. And you don't call the league office on a Friday and ask them. They have business hours like any other business. He called them in the middle of the week, and they got back to him and said that his touchdown celebration was okay. Like, to have that level of foresight and that level of arrogance. Like, I literally want to know what goes on in the mind of a guy like that to just say that my victory is so certain. What I want to do here is so certain that for me, I'm not even going to question whether or not it can happen, just whether or not my celebration of that thing is allowed. Incredible. That's one of the funniest things that happened this weekend. And again, if it weren't for Stephen A. Smith and Kevin Durant, it would be the funniest thing. That and Martellus Bennett quote when he compared Jay Cutler to Jesus Christ. Because of course he did. Why not? While you're talking, why not? So we turn our eyes to college football, where my number one takeaway is that Utah has jumped all the way up to number 2, despite the fact that maybe none of us know exactly how good Utah is. We don't know. Nobody knows. Nobody has a clue how good Utah is. We haven't got a clue what Utah is capable of, and this college football season continues to confound. And what I love about it is the playoff has made all of these other teams more interesting. That simply because a team has lost does not mean that they're finished. And as such, you have 1-loss teams and 2-loss teams that you might still be able to pay attention to. Okay, and you have the AP Top 25 that came out, and Florida jumps up in the polls, and TCU jumps up in the polls. They jump from 4 to 2, and Utah's jumped up as well. I'm just saying Utah jumped up to 5 is what it was. They were previously at 7, but it's interesting to see because it's just like all of these teams are jumping around. They're going up, and we don't really know anything about them. And I think that's the interesting thing with college football. In the NFL, you have a lot of these teams and these divisional rivals knocking heads and bumping into each other so very often that you're like, okay, we can start to gauge where you are based on the teams that you have beaten. Like, we can still be unsure about the Carolina Panthers because they haven't beaten anybody with a quarterback yet. They've played Bortles so far. Who else have the Panthers played? They've played Whedon. Like, it's not good, that list of teams that they've played so far to win in terms of the quarterback. But you have that sense in your mind. You can gauge where a team is, and you can't do that very well in college football a lot of times because you'll always have, they'll open up the season against some school you've never heard of and will probably never play again. And then you've got the conference games, and depending on your conference, like TCU versus Texas tells us nothing about TCU. It tells us everything we need to know about Texas, but it tells us nothing new about TCU. It tells us absolutely nothing about TCU. Okay, so Texas is now an ink stain on the ground. Congratulations, beat them 50-7. But like, now what? So that's our number 5 takeaway. That Utah moving up in the polls to me seems to indicate more that we don't know anything. Because like they beat a really good Oregon team. They beat BYU, but then like BYU goes around and just gets scorched by Michigan. So like, does that tell us that Michigan's also really good or that BYU's not very good? Like, what do these things tell us? And we're just going to need more time. We're just going to need more time in this season to figure it out. But meanwhile, I'm enjoying the ride. I mean, this stuff is hilarious stuff. Number 2 takeaway from the college football weekend, the SEC is really, really good. Really, really good. In the AP polls, the SEC has got 5 teams in here. Let me check them out. Ole Miss, Florida, Texas A&M, Alabama, LSU. Five teams, and all of these teams are so good. And Alabama, I think we declared them finished sooner than was probably necessary. Like, I think we just want to be done with Alabama so badly. Like, oh, look, they lost. They're finished. But nope, they're just a 1-loss team, and they absolutely steamrolled Georgia over the weekend, which, again, is another thing that I don't think anyone would have seen coming. Maybe Alabama, you thought they were going to win. That's possible because it's the SEC, and those 2 teams are incredibly good. So you can't necessarily stand here and say, well, I thought that Alabama was going to win. Like there was no chance that Alabama had of winning that game. But at the same time, I don't think that we thought that Georgia was going to get crushed like that. And Nick Chubb looked good. But you know what? Doesn't matter because Grayson Lambert didn't do anything. They didn't allow him to. So that's, great defense by the Tide in that game. And the SEC proving, it's not the Pac-12's time yet. That we want to crown the Pac-12 as the best, deepest conference in college football. I think the national media does anyway, because we are tired of seeing the SEC win. That is what it is. That if you are a national media member, you are tired of talking about the SEC dominating, and you're tired of talking about the SEC being deep, and people are tired of the SEC. And the SEC is not ready to go away yet. It's an incredibly tough and incredibly deep conference. I mean, what are you going to do? Those are some good teams in there. Okay. And my number 3 takeaway is a selfish takeaway. It involves the University of Texas. I don't know what to tell you about this team, except every week that they play a football game, they are avoiding some kind of historic loss. It's like they're avoiding some kind of history in the worst way. And this past week, they struggled and scratched and fought and clawed for all 7 of the points that they put on the board against TCU. Because had they not scored that touchdown, it would have been the worst shutout in Texas history since 1956, which predates most of you. Has to. It has to. They're just always dodging some kind of historic loss. And I can't tell you. I can't tell you what it is, but it's just like, man, this team looks worse and worse. And they had a player, like I mentioned earlier, tweeting during halftime about wanting to transfer out of Texas. Like, that's how bad it's gotten. I don't know. During the game, he was tweeting that during the game at halftime. Okay. And my number 2 takeaway from the college football weekend is that I think it could just be me. I think that our Heisman Trophy winner is going to be a running back, and it's either going to be Elliott or Fournette or Chubb. I'm still going to root for Boykin because I don't like to change my picks very much, and I when I hop on a bandwagon, I notoriously stay on the bandwagon entirely too long, and I'm always the last person off. So I'm going to stick with my guy Trevon Boykin. Okay, he threw 5 touchdowns against my Horns yesterday, so while he's making me look smart and making my team look terrible, I might as well get the best of both worlds. Am I right? I am right. So Ezekiel Elliott scores 3 touchdowns yesterday, or Saturday. And also on Saturday, Leonard Fournette made some dudes look like chumps, as is usually his custom. He continues to confound that Leonard Fournette. Here's the thing with Leonard Fournette. We don't know how good he can be yet. We haven't actually seen the best of Leonard Fournette, I don't think. Which is weird and nuts to think about because he already looks amazing. And the real crime here, and the story that circulates around and around, and the reason why stories do circulate around and around is because there is some merit to them. Leonard Fournette cannot play in the NFL right now, and that's a crime. And I feel like possibly the fans are the ones that really lose out, and that's why we're worried about this. We don't have to worry about this. Leonard Fournette is going to be in the NFL someday, one way or another, but it's just we're being robbed of Leonard Fournette against the best competition he can possibly play against. But I can tell you what, the best competition he can possibly play against, it doesn't exist in the world of college. It just doesn't. There isn't anybody big enough, strong enough, or fast enough to stop him. Not once he gets in the open field, not once he's got 2 guys already hanging on him. He is just steamrolling folks. And I have not seen anything like it. It is so weird to just see that this guy can't be in the NFL. He's going to be in college for another year. And he has no choice. But he's so much better than everyone he's playing against. It's crazy to me. It's actually crazy. All right, I got my number 1 takeaway coming up here in a little bit for college football this weekend here on AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. This is Clutch, Keon Rose.
Expect partly cloudy, dry, and warmer weather out there through the afternoon. Much better. Highs upper 70s to near 80. Tonight, fair, comfortable lows upper 50s. Now for Tuesday and Wednesday, looking good with lots of sunshine through the midweek, highs 78 to 80. Check out Glass Farm Nursery, the largest pansy supplier around, with a new shipment of pansies and violas, still only $12.99 a flat, as well as large mums only $17.99 at Glass Farm, Highway 11, 4 miles south of Trenton. And I'm WDEF News Fall Chief Meteorologist Patrick Core.
On AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
Fox News Talk 1240.
Are you tired of feeling like just another account number to your financial advisor? Try something refreshingly different. Call Edward Jones Financial Advisor Patrick Neal in Hickson at 870-7894. Edward Jones, making sense of investing. Member SIPC.
We've got a table here at Delia's in Saudi Daisy, ready to delight in a plate of authentic Mexican food. Delia's spreads a rich selection: loaded nachos, crazy chicken, homemade tamales, maybe the enchiladas with beef, chicken, pork, quesadillas. Every dish beautifully pictured on the menu to help us decide. Join us for lunch or dinner. We're at Delia's in Saudi Daisy on Dayton Pike near the Thrasher Light. Here's dinner. Delia's uses the freshest ingredients, cooked to perfection. Nachos, homemade. Delia's open every day except the Lord's Day. For lunch and dinner, treat yourself to Delia's genuine Mexican food. In Saudi, call 521-7145. That's 521-7145.
Ichiro Suzuki is possibly one of the most perplexing human beings in all of sports, because Ichiro is like, what, in his 40s now, still playing baseball, still playing incredibly well, and he just kind of does whatever he wants. So yesterday, despite the fact that Ichiro has never pitched in a game before, because, you know, he's not a pitcher, he went an inning, he decided to pitch. Why not? 1 hit, 2 runs given up. But like, the amazing part about that is that Ichiro was out there throwing sliders. He has a pitch that he can throw? Since when? What? It's the most confusing thing I've ever seen in my life. He has a slider that he can throw. Okay, you know what? Can he just, I know there's a whole process that you go through to get people into the Hall of Fame. Can we just get Ichiro in? Can we just induct him tonight? Just have him like the one guy that doesn't have to wait the 7 years or however long you have to, just move him into the Hall of Fame. Because he actually has a slider that he can throw. What? And that also tells you that the Marlins are a bad baseball team and they're a dumpster fire, because no other team would logically let Ichiro pitch. You have to know, oh yeah, no, our season is over, so we're just running Ichiro out there. Why not? This is the most exciting thing that they've done this season. Easily. He was out there throwing sliders, man. It's too funny. There's too many funny things happen this weekend. And my favorite funny thing that happened this weekend is the beef between Kevin Durant and ESPN analyst, insider, First Take show host, Stephen A. Smith. Kevin Durant get into an argument. Stephen A. Smith basically said on First Take last Friday that he thought that from the sources that he had, people that he knew that were close to Kevin Durant, that Kevin Durant's mindset is if that things don't go well in Oklahoma City this year, he's gonna go to LA. He's gonna play with the Lakers. Which, by the way, my brother is of that opinion as well, but he's also a Lakers fan, so he's hardly the most unbiased source. But looks like my little brother beat Stephen A. to the punch there. Stephen A. is saying this, and he's saying it with a straight face, like my sources are telling me this, and like reporters do. And you know how I lament sports journalism. I talked about it a little bit last week. Sports journalism is filled with too many unnamed sources. Too many times, very often, sports reporters will just say, I have sources somewhere, and it almost gives them credence to say whatever it is that they want. They just throw out whatever kind of information they want. They've just got license to just yak. Now that I've said I've got sources, and then if someone calls them on it, they're like, no, my source said that. I didn't say that. That was my source. He said that. So then you just protect yourself with sources that aren't substantiated in any way. And we all acknowledge that they're not substantiated. And I think we let reporters get away with it because very often they are correct. Like, we like having that inside scoop. We don't want to not have it. But the sources thing, it is tough. And if you're an athlete and you feel like someone is reporting on you and they don't have sources and they never spoke to you, you know what I mean? Like, they never said anything to you, so you don't know where this information is coming from, whether it's right or wrong. Like, yeah, your first instinct is going to be to retaliate against the guy with anonymous sources because he doesn't have any proof of that. So Kevin Durant retaliated at Stephen A. Smith, and he said, and Stephen A. Smith, basically, I'm summarizing here, Stephen A. Smith didn't talk to me, Stephen A. Smith didn't talk to my friends, Stephen A. Smith didn't talk to my family, so he's lying. And there's nothing wrong with all of the things that he said up until the point where he said, so he's lying. Because once he called Stephen A. Smith a liar, now Stephen A. Smith gets upset and angry. And Stephen A. Smith went on First Take this morning, and you have to find that footage and hear it. And maybe I'll try and bring it on the show to play tomorrow because it's the most funny thing I've ever heard in my life. Stephen A. Smith looked deadpan at the camera and said in a voice that sounds entirely overly serious and also like he was some kind of James Bond villain, "You don't want to make an enemy out of me." Stephen A. Smith, man, that was hilarious stuff. That was some funny stuff. Because it's the pettiest squabble in sports. It's dealing with an issue that may or may not happen an entire NBA season from now. Whether or not Kevin Durant leaves Oklahoma City is of zero importance at the moment. I mean, it doesn't really matter. Like, if Stephen A. Smith made this allegation and Kevin Durant said nothing, the story dies right there. If Kevin Durant just goes, no, I don't want to talk about it. If Kevin Durant goes, that's ridiculous, I'm staying in Oklahoma City. If Kevin Durant says, well, I'm open to playing the entire market in free agency, that's something I want to do. If he acknowledges that he's willing to play the market in free agency but doesn't specify LA, then you know what? This story is not substantiated and doesn't grow legs. The fact that he said that Stephen A. Smith is a liar, well, Stephen A. is going to take offense to that, and now this is a story. And I believe that if you're in the media and you're a reporter, you should be like a referee in a game. You're there. We acknowledge that you're there. But when you become the story, that's where things get a little sketchy. You really want to try not to be the story. You do not want to be the story if you're a reporter. If you're a media member, here I am on this radio show talking to you. I'm talking about the stories. That's fun. That's fine. If I ever become the story, you know what I mean? Like if I report something about Marcus Mariota and Marcus Mariota takes offense to that, starts talking about me, now I messed up somewhere. I messed up because now I became the story. I'm not trying to be the story. I don't look no interest in being the story. I have about as much interest in being the story as I have literally in being a kite. I don't know. I couldn't think of a thing. I have no interest in being the story. I don't want anybody to know what I think about like politics. I don't want people to find, oh, look, I have like random beef. I keep picking on Marcus Mariota because I just think he's cool and his name sounds cool, so I just keep saying his name. But like, I don't want to start a feud with Andrew Luck. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not trying to start anything with Devontae Freeman. Like, I'm trying to not to be the story. That's the goal. That is ultimately, if you're in the media, that's the goal. You're the referee of the game. You manage the game. You officiate the game. You make sure that it is still a game and that it's got rules that are enforced. You don't try and become the game. Okay, I was talking last week about Cam Newton. Cam Newton said that Ed Hockley told him that he was not old enough to get a certain call, and that's a problem for Ed Hockley. Once we start talking about Ed Hockley's name, once we know his name, he's become the game. He's no longer just managing the game. He's become the game. That's a problem. So what Stephen A. Smith is doing here is a problem. And instead of Stephen A. Smith going, well, I'm not lying, okay, maybe my sources aren't anybody that's a friend of yours or a family member or you. Maybe my source is inside an NBA front office somewhere. I'm not a liar. Maybe he leaves it there. This story doesn't go anywhere. But no. Stephen A. Smith looked into the camera and went, you do not want to make an enemy out of me. Are you a James Bond villain? Like, I understand. Okay. I was about to ask if he was a cartoon. Like, Stephen A. Smith in that instance came off as a cartoon. And I understand that in the larger scheme of things, all right, Kevin Durant is just being a guy that's saying, I didn't talk to him, okay? How is he coming up with these sources? His source can't be anybody in my camp because none of us talked to him. And Stephen A. Smith is coming off as a cartoon. And then I'm wondering, like, why? Why do you have to allow yourself to do this? And then I realized that, like, Stephen A. Smith more often than not comes off as a cartoon character, though. First Take on ESPN is possibly the funniest cartoon on TV. Because the way that Stephen A. Smith and Skip Bayless behave on that show is, in a lot of ways, so asinine as to be cartoonish. They say things. They make wild predictions based on information that is either incomplete or I don't want to say made up, but like unsubstantiated. When you say, look, Stephen A., you can make this go away. Who's your source? Name them. You can't defend anything because we don't know if your source exists or not. We don't have them here. We don't have them. We don't have a name. We don't have a position that they work. We don't have anything. We don't have their proximity to Kevin Durant, okay? Is it Kevin Durant's neighbor kid? That's your source? Because that's not a good source. We don't know. Your source is unsubstantiated. And until that moment happens, when you tell us who it is, so are you. It's cartoonish. It's cartoonish. Okay? And it's not the first time that it's happened. All right? Stephen A. Smith, Skip Bayless, the two of them. And I understand that that's their dynamic on the show. And it's very easy to talk about First Take and say that Stephen A. and Skip Bayless, they're so stupid because yada, yada, yada. They said X thing today, or they said, whatever thing today. The fact of the matter is that that's the job that they're playing, because Stephen A. is an intelligent man and Skip Bayless is an intelligent man, and neither of them are as silly in real life as they come off on their show. And they do come off as silly on their show. They do. Because they take whatever sports story happened throughout the day or throughout the weekend, and then they just refine it down to the lowest common denominator. I don't know, so that the common person can understand, but like, we're all smarter than the stuff that they're giving us on that show. I don't really watch First Take anymore. I watched that clip because it got sent to me. I can't watch First Take anymore. I'm too smart for First Take. You're too smart for First Take. It's a cartoon. That's like if your kids wanted to learn more about sports, they should watch First Take. Not because those two guys aren't smart enough to have a smarter discussion, but because they refuse to. They just don't. I don't know why not. Okay? Why is 2 Chainz on First Take? That was like the last time I watched First Take. 2 Chainz was on. And I was like, really? 2 Chainz is a rapper. And he's a fan. And he doesn't know any more than I do. I want insiders. Okay? Adam Schefter on First Take? Absolutely. Yeah, that makes total sense. Jaws on First Take? The amount of film that he watches? Mel Kiper? I mean, I'm not a huge fan of Chris Broussard, but bring in Chris Broussard. He's an NBA insider. Give me guys that know more stuff than I do. I'm watching your show to learn. And you're over here telling me you've got a source that tells me that Kevin Durant is going to go to LA. Okay, cool. Who is this source? Can you describe anything about this source? And I'm not talking about, height, weight. I'm talking about give me a name. Give me a proximity from Kevin Durant that this source is. Give me, is it a member of his family? Is it a friend of his? Is it someone in the front office? Is it someone in the training room who just heard Kevin Durant say LA is a really cool place? Like, this is important information, and we don't get any of it because, and we've allowed it to happen. Fans, we've allowed it to happen. The media gets to tell us whatever we want to hear, and then we don't learn anything new at all. It's crazy. And it's only getting worse. Thanks for listening. This is Clutch with Keon Rose on AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. I'll see you guys here in 23 hours for another episode of Clutch.
You get partly cloudy, dry, and warmer weather out there through the afternoon. Much better. Highs upper 70s to near 80. Tonight, fair, comfortable lows upper 50s. Now for Tuesday and Wednesday, looking good with lots of sunshine through the midweek. Highs 78 to 80. Check out Glass Farm Nursery, the largest pansy supplier around, with a new shipment of pansies and violas, still only $12.99 a flat, as well as large mums only $17.99 at Glass Farm, Highway 11, 4 miles south of Trenton. And I'm WDEF News Fall Chief Meteorologist Patrick Ward.
On AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. This is America Now with Meghan McCain.
Al Gore running is crazy. You're flying around in your private jet all over the world, and you want average Americans to care about the environment. Don't you think you should be doing your part as well?
Meghan McCain, weekdays at 7 p.m.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.